David Kurtz here at TPM Media with New Yorker editor David Remnick. David, we're at a point in the evening where it doesn't really look like there's a path to victory for John McCain. Obviously, the three Pacific Coast states have yet to come in, but no one sees any chance for him there. And once you get Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Mexico on the map for Obama, I mean, it looks like it's over.
It pretty much does. I mean, I can't see any math. I can't see any scenario for it. Once you saw Ohio go, and everything else that's supposed to go, that McCain would want to go his way, is just not. Maybe Virginia is tighter than the Obama people would like to have imagined, but even that looks gone. So it seems like Obama's going to be the next president.
Reflect on that for a moment, because it is, you know, just my own personal reaction is just staggering that at this stage, you know, he's actually won this thing.
I think it's staggering on so many levels. It's staggering on the sense that the political era that we've grown up with, the Reagan era, which began in 1980, is now would seem to be done. It would really seem to be done. The conservative era that had Reagan at its helm seems to be done. It's foolish to overstate these things, but I think that's a conceivable scenario.
Is it? Go ahead.
No, and you know, let's not overlook the most obvious thing. He's the first African American president, and it is astonishing to think of. I mean, I never would have thought that an African American be elected before a woman, simply because of the math involved. But it was the right candidate with the right background and the right temperament, who barely won against a woman, who also ran a fascinating campaign. That race is something that we're going to be talking about and thinking about for a long, long time.
I was wondering if we don't go back even further and call this the end of sort of the post-civil rights era, because I mean, if you look at what Republican campaigns, even before Reagan, have been based on. I mean, it's largely, I mean, this race issue has been a politically divisive issue in campaigns for now 45 years.
Absolutely. And of the many, you know, in a way, Obama is a candidate of speeches. He's not a candidate of experience. We'd be foolish to say that he has this long political experience that he's had that we can count on as a way to analyze him and judge him. He's a man, in many ways, of, as Sarah Palin would put it, a verbiage. I mean it in a much greater sense than she does. And one of his most interesting speeches on race was not long after he announced for president, and he gave a speech in Selma on the anniversary of the marches there, civil rights marches, and he said, look, you out there, this older generation, this is the Moses generation, the generation of marchers and demonstrators and even of martyrs. You, John Lewis, you, Joseph Lowery, and in memory, King, and all the rest. We are the Joshua generation, and the generation who has benefited from your suffering, from your sacrifices. We are the generation that is able to expand the middle class enormously. Not that discrimination is gone, not that blacks don't suffer in greater numbers from economic discrimination and all the rest, but we are the Joshua generation that has middle class and a black upper middle class and much far greater opportunity than you have ever known. And now it's our turn. Now we have to reach the promised land. Moses didn't reach the promised land. And so without getting too weepy, as we're supposed to not be in our profession or craft, I am enormously moved by this night for that reason among many.
You spent your day here talking to William Ayers, as it turns out. You have a piece up on the New Yorker website this evening. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. Tell me about what you talked with him about and what he had to say.
Well, Peter Slevin at the Washington Post and I were over on 50th Street, and at the school where Obama had in the morning voted, where Farrakhan had voted and William Ayers had voted. It's a very small community, Hyde Park. And I was interviewing an 8-year-old kid who was dressed as George Washington, and Peter said he's going to go over there and knock on Bill Ayers' door. And out came William Ayers. I said goodbye to the 8-year-old kid dressed as George Washington, and Peter and I, me for the New Yorker, he for the Washington Post, talked to him at great length. And I think for the first time about this phenomenon of his involuntary life as a factor in this race. Sarah Palin, I guess, was the one that said that Obama had been palling around with terrorists, and so it was interesting to hear Ayers talk about how he reacted to this, which you can read all about on, you'll forgive me, NewYorker.com.
Is he bitter, angry, was surprised? What?
No, I think what he said to Peter and to me was that he resented, although resent is too big a word, he felt like it was somebody who'd been made into a cartoon. And, he didn't excuse everything in his past, but he said, look, the history of the Weather Underground is well known. The Weather Underground planted around a dozen bombs and places, tried to blow up things in protest of the Vietnam War. He said, but look, the Vietnam War, thousands of people were being killed every week, and we were trying to, in a sense, raise hell to stop it. And what he meant by "I didn't do enough" is that they clearly didn't do what was sufficient to stop that war, because it dragged on and on and on, and thousands of people were killed, and millions into the millions in Vietnamese. So I think he was repentant for being bombastic in his youth, for excessive rhetoric and all kinds of sins of that kind. But I didn't find that he was making apologies for his ferocious, radical politics of those days, which are very similar to his politics now. So, and I didn't find him also furious or angry or resentful for the attention, although he's gotten lots of threats. He said that there had been, in one day he got 2 emails, one of them saying that a posse was going to come and shoot him, and another email said that that somebody was going to come and they were going to waterboard him. And a policeman friend of his said, well, I hope the first people come before the second, because it'll be quicker. So he was, in a way, in good humor.
So between the Ayers attacks failing and Obama's blackness, for lack of a better word, I mean, in a way, it seems as if the 60s come to an end tonight, finally.
It's about time, isn't it? I mean, I'm 50 years old, and I barely remember the 60s. I mean, never has a decade been so persistent. For better and for worse. Obama is a post-60s guy. He's 47 years old, and his frame of reference when he discusses the 60s has historical distance, and his own particular background is even more distant. And I think it's an interesting story, not only that you're having your first African-American as president, but it's this particular one, a biracial man who comes to his racial identity not by inheritance so much as somebody who goes out and pursues it and acquires it step by step, who struggled with that a lot as a young man. And yet his rhetoric and his attitude toward race is far different from his predecessors who had run for president, like Jesse Jackson. And even though Jesse Jackson did try to build what he called a rainbow coalition, he was a very different kind of candidate than Barack Obama, and a lot of time and a lot of water is under the bridge. It's 24 years later. It's a very different America, without being too weepy about it and without overestimating what it means in the broadest sense. We've come a long way.
David, we appreciate your time.